All right. Welcome to tonight's community conversation. We are speaking with Reverend Tom Capo from the Unitarian Universalist congregation here in South Miami. Let's see. iPad is Holly. Great. Holly's here too. So welcome everybody. Thank you for being here with us tonight. Ray started off with a really great question. He was wondering what the heck this South Miami Neighbors group is even all about. So Ray, this group is open to anybody, but in particular, we're really trying to bring South Miami residents together and get to know our neighbors. Really, it's as simple as that, you know, and finding community and knowing who has what to offer to the community. Everybody brings different skills and different talents. And so this Zoom community conversation series that we initiated a couple of weeks ago is really to showcase our wonderful South Miami residents and all of the gifts that they have to offer. And you never know when you might need to get in touch with one of your neighbors who might have a certain skill set or talent or something that you might want to know more about or might need their services. So, or just to talk. Which we all need to do more these days because social distancing is really starting to take a toll, which is why I was really looking forward to speaking with Reverend Capo tonight, because I think a lot of people find themselves past sort of that honeymoon phase of the pandemic, the social distancing. At first, it was all kind of exciting and new and great to take a break from life, and now that that's sort of subsiding and we are really setting into the reality of the situation, it's beginning to get more and more difficult. So I think that our congregations, our spiritual and religious leaders really do play an important part in our community, particularly at this point, because of what we're living through. So I was grateful that Reverend Tom was willing to speak with us. And Reverend Tom, if you want to start by maybe talking a little bit about the congregation, what Unitarian Universalist, is it a religion? Is it a philosophy? What do you believe in? What, just a little sort of broad view of what your congregation is about.
Well, thank you, Leslie. Yeah, I'd be happy to. Unitarian Universalism has certainly been around for a long time. I don't know that people were aware of it because it's very prominent in the Northeast more so than in the South. There were Unitarians around the turn of the Revolution, 1700s, who believed that they were a Christological religion that believed that Jesus was a man or a prophet as opposed to a God, part of God. They were Unitarian as opposed to Trinitarian. And the Universalists who believe everyone was destined to heaven, believing that a loving God wouldn't destine anyone to hell. But over the years, at least 200 years or so that this denomination has existed, and Unitarians and Universalists came together in 1961, we're now more of a pluralistic faith where we believe in that each person is on their own individual spiritual journey, and that what is more important is how we live in the world. So we don't have a creed, a belief system, but we have what are called our principles, which are value statements. Like we affirm and promote the inherent worth and dignity of every person, justice, equity, and compassion in human relations, that we that the inherent, interdependent web of all existence, that we're a part of that, and we need to affirm that and believe in that, and work to support that. We believe in the democratic process, and we believe in justice and compassion. So these are more value statements than they are belief statements. So that each person who comes to our church, and we do call it a church, we do call it a religion, is on their own individual spiritual journey. So we have agnostics and atheists and Buddhists and Christians and theists and the full spectrum of religious beliefs. Many times we have people who have multiple beliefs, finding that there are certain aspects of certain religion, for instance, maybe Buddhism, and a certain part of what they grew up maybe with Christianity, that sort of fit together for them. We also see a lot of families who may have mixed marriages in terms of maybe one's Christian, one's Jewish, and some they can't find a place that they can have faith community together, and so they join us. So we see a lot of different people join us. Some who have found themselves not fitting well in any traditional religion, but having spiritual beliefs and wanting a place to explore those and feel like they're supported. So that's a good place to start. Leslie, you're
I do that often. That's really cool. I like that you guys are open to a lot of different beliefs. I myself am not religious, but I am spiritual. And I think that a lot of people don't know where to place themselves, you know, in what group or in what, come Sunday when they want to maybe gather as a community, not knowing where really, how to do that. You know, I think that you guys offer a beautiful opportunity there for people.
I think we do. We have what's called freedom of the pulpit and freedom of the pew. And what that means is that the person that's preaching preaches from their heart and preaches what they believe and what they think. And we have freedom of the pew, saying that the people in the pew can take what they want or don't want. They can discard what they don't need. And so my role is not to tell people what to believe or tell them this is the way they should be in the world, but to prod them to look deeper within themselves, to take that time to explore who they are, who they want to be, how they want to be in the world, and help them achieve that.
Mm-hmm. Now, do you guys focus on punishment at all? Not punishment, because you had already said that that's not really where you're coming from, but consequences. You know, there are consequences.
Well, yes. So I guess you could say we believe in the natural consequences that occur in the here and now. So if you do something bad, you know, you hurt somebody's feelings or you punch somebody or whatever, that the guilt that you feel internally should prod you to make amends, to find a way to make peace with that within yourself.
So it's not necessarily the fear of what God will do to you, but it's your own internal compass.
Exactly. And that's an important piece in all this. We say that, you know, it's a responsible search for truth and meaning that we advocate. So that it's not just you sit back and just go through the world, but you actually have to take the time to look within yourself, to feel like, you know, to find what it is inside you that you want to be and how you want to react. And so you have to explore that in order to sort through some of the things maybe that you feel that you've done wrong, or where you, as Jewish people say, where you've missed the mark, and to try to bring yourself back to center in a way that makes you feel more grounded and spiritually grounded in your existence.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome.
I think so too.
So,
um, so let me say one other thing, and I haven't mentioned before, and that is that. So there are kind of two major things that you find when you come to a Unitarian Universalist church. One is that we encourage this individual search for truth and meaning, and the other is that we really encourage people to make a positive difference in the world. There's been a long history, going back to the Revolution, and people that were working for abolitionists who were trying to get rid of slavery. There were people that started. You go back and look at Unitarians, and they were people that started the Red Cross, or that started the women's movement. They were advocates for making a better world, and you see that even today. We work strongly to down in Homestead to try to shut down that camp that they had for the the children who are immigrants down there. We just feel like we need to be doing something positive in the world. Right now, our focus is to try, as a congregation, our focus is to try to help people get out to vote, particularly those populations who have difficulty, like the people who've gotten out of prison, people who are unsure of their status, in terms of their ability to vote, maybe those that are poor who haven't been able to get registered for one reason or another, or feel afraid that they might do something wrong, or they might get arrested if they don't follow this course to be able to vote. And so that's what we're working on. Our denomination is a combination of individual congregations. So we call ourselves a Unitarian Universalist Association, or Association of Congregations. So we don't have a hierarchy telling us what to believe. Each of our own congregations decide how we hold our services, how we do our governance, and we turn to each other, all the different congregations, for best practices. The denomination does help vet ministers, and helps us go to get the proper education necessary. We all have to have Master of Divinity degree and other training to become ministers. And then the congregations themselves choose their ministers, the ones that they feel will fit them best.
let me ask you something. Did you grow up in this church, or was it something that you found later in life?
So this is something I found later in life. I started out as a Catholic, and when I was in high school, I was attending a Jesuit high school. Jesuits are really good about teaching you how to question everything. They're very intellectual. Many of them have multiple degrees, and so they taught me how to question, how to ask questions about all kinds of physics, geometry, all kinds of things. But when I started pressing on theological issues, there were boundaries I couldn't broach with them. They felt like I just had to accept, and I had trouble with that. And so I left the Catholic Church after that, and spent some time kind of wandering. And sophomore, junior year of college, I was working in a psychiatric hospital, and one of the nurses there told me about the Unitarian Universalist Church. And so I went there for the first time, and the minister preached on what she called stages of faith. If you were, there are ways that you can interact with yourself, with others, and the divine in different ways. And as you go through these stages, you learn more about yourself. You learn more about your connection to the divine. You learn more about how to be in relationship with other people. And in these stages, you don't have to go through all the stages to have a fulfilling spiritual life, but each stage has different benefits and different callings. So as you get further and further up this chain, it becomes more important in your spiritual life to help others. It's at least this particular theory is more about, when you reach a certain point, it's more important to help others than to worry about your own needs and feelings. And that was really interesting to me. And then I went to they had an adult education class and they had people who were pro-life and pro-choice talking to each other, which I thought was fascinating because, you know, all I ever heard was these two groups in conflict with each other, but they had a civil dialogue with each other, and I thought that was amazing that you could talk about difficult issues in a civil way and question each other and you know, be able to stay engaged in relationship with each other and still have these kind of conversations. So I was enthralled, and I became a psychotherapist, and then about 16, 17 years ago became a minister.
So I'm fascinated by what you just said about the pro-choice and pro-life coming together. Is that something that you at the church, have you tried bringing two different groups together like that to hold discussions or
Oh
to?
yes, as a matter of fact, we're working now with a group in South Florida called let's see, South Florida People of Color. And what they do is they do what are called awkward dinners. And we were scheduled to do an awkward dinner, as a matter of fact, I think today or a couple days ago. And what that is where people of color, different colors, you know, races and ethnicities come together and talk about difficult questions with each other, questions they have trouble asking the people of other races or other ethnicities. So, you know, when I first got here, I was trying to find connections with different people in South Florida, because I always think it's important to be in relationship with people who are different than you, whether it be theologically or race or ethnicity. And I think it's good for the congregation to be in relationship as well. And so I went to one of these, and it was fascinating. When you start off with one-on-one with a person who is a different race, a different religion, and you're getting to know each other and learning more about each other. And then they bring us into a small group, and they begin asking us questions and asking us to respond to questions that are somewhat challenging. You know, questions I can tell you that, you know, when some of the questions that were asked were things like, how do you see the Hispanic population and the African American population in relationship to each other in the South Miami area or in the Miami area? There was some challenging responses to that we talked about. And it just, you know, I think it's good for us to be in relationship with people we don't know and don't know well. It helps us grow emotionally and spiritually to do that.
It totally reminds me of the garden, because as a gardener, I'm always looking for diversity that strengthens the garden. You know, when you have a monoculture or you know, just one type of plant, it tends to bring in disease and imbalance. So I'm thinking of what you're saying and how there's resiliency and being interconnected in that way.
I think so. I mean, you know, one of the things, we have certain rituals we do every year that are fairly unique to Unitarian Universalism. One of them is called the Flower Communion. And we do that in the spring. And everybody brings their own flower, and we exchange flowers during the ritual. And so that you don't take home the same flower that you brought. And we put them all in a bouquet. So we bring them in, we put them in a bouquet that represents all the diversity in this congregation. And you take away a different flower representing how that diversity enriches you. And you take that back out into the world. So we try to formalize some of those ideas, not just in preaching. You know, our services are fairly Protestant in their design. You know, we have hymns and we have readings, and but the content is very different.
Sorry, when you say readings, what do you mean by that? I don't even know what that really is.
So we could have readings from any of the major religions. We could have poetry. We could have, you know, what's that woman's name?
Oh, Brown.
Brown, yes, Brene Brown. And I mean, people we think that hold some wisdom that will prod people into thinking more about who they are and where they are and who they want to be. It's those, you know, those are important questions that people who struggle with this, and it could be They could be religious. They could be, Brene is not necessarily a religious person. She's more of a secular person. I think she's a sociologist, isn't she? I
I
believe.
believe, yeah.
Uh, there are people out there who have wisdom that we can look at and can be helpful to us in our journey. So that's what the readings are. They could be anything. I mean, poetry, prose, scientific.
Nice.
Yeah.
So that's a nice little segue into, I want to touch upon where we're at right now with this pandemic, and where people might be really starting to feel uneasy with life as it currently is. Being home, being out of their comfort zones, not in any kind of routine. People can start to get anxious, angry, emotions can start bubbling up, things that have sort of been stuffed down for who knows how long might start surfacing because we have time to
Well,
sit.
and we've seen, I think, a few things that on a psychological level. We've seen an increase in domestic violence. We've seen an increase in a abusive language. I mean, one of the things that we've experienced in these Zoom calls has been Zoom bombing, where people come in and are abusive or post something that's just tacky or mean or ugly, uh, sexually inappropriate, all kinds of things. And I think that when we're separate from one another, when we don't have contact with each other, we can be more impulsive and more reactive and more selfish, and not consider the needs and feelings of others. And so it just comes out, whatever we think is valuable to us, regardless of how it affects anybody else, it just comes out. And so we've seen so much more of this. I mean, I just was listening to NPR, I think it was yesterday, and they were talking about people from Asians from all over Asia who are in the Americas now, who are being abused because they're being treated as if they caused, in somehow or another, or were a cause of the virus. And that's as far from the truth as anything. And they've been here, as almost as long as this country has, for some of them. And so I think it's important. And what I've done for our congregation is a few things to try to help them through this time. Is we've talked a lot about, what are the spiritual practices that you do in your life right now that can ground you while you're alone? How can you stay connected to other people? We've offered Zoom calls for members of the congregation to meet with each other, sort of like a coffee hour of sorts on Sunday mornings after the service, since we can't actually be in relationship, personal face-to-face kind of relationship. We've started live streaming the services so that the congregation again they can see the inside of the sanctuary. They can see the pulpit. They can see people's faces that they recognize who are part of the service. And again, that helps ground them in community and in connection. I'm bringing in more people to be part of the service so we can find different ways of being able to see each other. I've just recently started doing some videos with some of the members of the congregation that we show during the service so people can see each other. And we've made calls to people in the congregation. We've called everybody just so we are able to talk to each other. I found one woman who had been a little disconnected from the church, really valued being able to call other members of the church just so that she had something to do. She was alone much of the time. And really, one of the other things I would say, and this is something my mother had told me, she's alone, she's 85 or 83. And she said to me, one of the things I'm struggling with the most is not being able to touch someone. She's all by herself, even though she has a nice home and, a dog and a cat. She just not being able to physically touch someone has made it more difficult for her to cope on an emotional and spiritual level.
Definitely. And I don't know if you've seen a lot of shelters, animal shelters
Mm-hmm.
are adopting out all of their animals, which is so awesome to see. But it speaks to that. It speaks to how our mental health depends so much on touch and feeling loved, not just hearing it over the phone, but really feeling it physically. So,
And I'm trying to figure out ways that we can feel more connected to each other. It was just my wife and I are always on the lookout for these kind of things. And, you know, um, we did not too long ago, we had kind of an open uh, for a Zoom call where people could work on their art projects or their hobbies together and just chat,
mhm,
and just chat with each other, just to stay connected. It's so important just to normalize our connections with each other and to not
totally,
forget how important those are.
totally. Um, so I want to read to you. Holly wrote something in the chat here that she actually went to a Jesuit high school, and she loved the sense of service that she left with. That might, and you were talking a little bit about
Mhm.
that, just evolving spiritually to that place where you are no longer really just thinking about yourself anymore. You're really thinking of how you can be of service to others and really help. And that might be something that someone who is feeling a sense of loneliness or anxiety or stress or fear, all of those negative emotions that are natural to be feeling at this point, but you don't want to stay in that for too long, before it becomes unhealthy or you get.
Oh, I agree. I can tell you a few things that people in our congregation are doing. I have one member who is trying to collect funds for some of the actors and actresses that are out of work right now who are not part of the union. So she's got a GoFundMe page for them, and that's something that she worked on because she felt like she needed to do something for somebody else during this time of isolation. I mean, it's so difficult, in this isolated time to find things where you can be of service. It's such a struggle. But when we made the calls to all the members of the congregation, we asked them, uh, would they be able to help others if there were some people in the congregation that needed help? And many people said, if they need medical advice, I'm a doctor, I'd be glad to talk to them. If they need someone to come over and deliver food to them, I'd be glad to do that. So people want to do that. And some of our members were already doing things like helping their neighbors. This idea of service is so important to us as a congregation, but also I think you're right, to people in general. When you're feeling isolated and you feel kind of depressed, it is good to get out and be able to do something for others. And this time makes it so challenging to do that.
So do you have any suggestions for somebody who is feeling, they're at a low, they're scared? What do you suggest somebody could do to help someone else in this?
Well, you mean to help themselves or to help someone else?
Well, I guess both. I mean, by helping someone, you're sort of helping yourself at the
I
same
agree 100%.
time, right?
Um, you know, there are a lot of things going on, and it's just a matter of figuring out how the time you have and the resources you have. I've seen a lot of people help in some of the food drives that are going on right now, if you feel safe enough. Or I know that if you know someone that's elderly who can't get out. My mother was a perfect example. Unfortunately, she's a perfect example for a lot of these problems. But she couldn't, she had a light in her house that was out in her kitchen. And so her kitchen was dark. And so we had someone who was willing to come over. She sat in the backyard and someone came into the house and changed the light bulb in her kitchen. And they felt good. And she felt wonderful because now she had light in her kitchen. So I think simple things like checking with those who are living near you, checking with your relatives, checking with your friends, seeing how they're doing, seeing if they need anything. I mean, I know my wife and I just bought this box of gloves. You know, we got them from some industrial park that was up in the Northeast, and they weren't able to use them because, you know, some of the industry is shutting down. And so we've taken a box of them and brought them to church and told people, anyone who needs some gloves as they go out, you know, here are some for you. And you stop by the church, you know, we'll have them outside, you can pick some up. But I think that's a place to start, checking with the people you know, that live near you or who you care about, just seeing what you can do for them. And then in the larger picture, I do think, you know, you can check with your own faith communities and see what they're doing. As I mentioned before, we're working on voting. So what we're doing this Sunday or this Saturday is we're bringing the League of Women Voters and SAVE, their two organizations, together to speak to anybody that wants to join us about how to help people vote, and about voting by mail, and what are the risks and challenges of voting in Florida. So we feel like this is an important thing we're giving out to the community so that people can get their questions answered. Because a lot of people are concerned, how are we going to vote when it comes in November? You know, we saw what happened in Wisconsin just recently. So people are wondering if that same thing is going to happen here.
So I'd like to make it clear how somebody can actually participate on Saturday. And when I upload the video, I can write in the post as well, you know, what someone can do.
So it's 1 o'clock this Saturday. If they'll go to our webpage, uumiami.org, they'll find a link. It's a registration for the presentation. So you click on it, you register, and it sends you the Zoom link, and then you can join us on Saturday.
Great.
So it's uumiami.org.
Fantastic. I will be there.
I'm really excited. I mean, I've talked with a lot of people about their fears and concerns about voting by mail, and I know it has a problematic history in Florida. And, you know, many people in Florida prefer to go out and be present, but there's a risk involved. And, you know, like the people in Wisconsin, do you take that risk? You put on your mask, you hope you don't get infected. I mean, I shut down our church much sooner than other churches shut down because I just didn't want to put people at risk. And I think we all need to be aware of that. You know, how do we do things safely now? And I don't think you know, one of the things I preached about on Sunday is I don't think we're going to see the country come back to what we experienced it as before the coronavirus ever again. But I think we'll, and to some semblance, we'll see some movement toward that, but that may not be till next year. I mean, you know, I see the slow movement of recapturing things that are important to us, but also realizing there's going to be some limitations that we'll have to learn to live with in the future.
Mark Lago has written in the chat, he says, hanging chads. I'm not sure I know what that means. Do you?
What?
Mark, do you want to elaborate on that?
Oh, I see what you're saying. You want to say, how do you connect with people when you're wearing a mask?
Hello.
Hi. I was just saying, because we vote by mail has a really kind of rocky history in because of the whole hanging chads thing and the Bush election where it was really close, but it was kind of just a joke. But
you know, did you also write, or how do we express our appreciation, or is that, no, you did the hanging chads, okay. Yeah. Well, you know, again, I think people are going to be afraid that their vote won't count. And so I remember as we got close to the last election, holding services just so people felt grounded and confident that they were doing their best they could to get their vote to count. And I know it sounds like a strange thing to do in a church, but we didn't want people to feel depressed if things didn't turn out the way that they hoped would. And we even had a service after the election was over for people to express their feelings, because there were emotionally and spiritually, people went through a very difficult time after the last election. And they just needed a place to feel like that that they were in community, that this community could still hold them as they went through the difficulties that they did, and that we could still be in community and move forward together, and that this world would still be okay in one form or fashion.
Reverend Tom, you've mentioned a couple times tonight this notion of being grounded.
Mm-hmm.
I was hoping maybe you could talk a little bit about what that means for someone who's never even heard that before. What is being grounded?
Well, to me, that means that we have a sense of peace of mind within ourselves, not sense that out here it's going to be okay. We can't control what's going on out in the world, and we can't always be completely at peace with everything that's going on within ourselves. But we can hold on to this sense of that we can get through whatever we need to get through, that we will be able to, because we have the resources internally and the connections externally to feel some sense that we'll be okay. That we may not, there may be problems, there may be illness that we have to face, but there's still resources within and around us that will help us feel that we're going to be okay, that we'll still have community, that we'll still have a sanity, we'll still have a sense of self, even as we go through these times.
And does that require having faith?
So that's an interesting question. So Unitarian Universalists have an interesting struggle with that word, because faith in what? Because you can have faith in a divinity, you can have faith in a friend to follow through when you ask them to do something. You can have faith in a religious community or in a company that you feel like is going to treat you well as you work for them for many years. So faith can be many different things. I would say that I have faith in that I'm going to be okay. I have faith that I'm in a community that will stay connected, that we'll still care about each other. We'll still have a beloved community with one another. I do personally, not as a church or as a denomination, I do have faith in a divine being. I consider myself what's called a panentheist, a belief in the divinity in all things, and not specifically in any particular religion. So again, that's the struggle within Unitarian Universalism. Everybody approaches that word faith from a different perspective. But that faith is important because within that idea of faith is also trust. And trust is so important. It's one of the foundational values that we learn very early in our upbringing. If you look at, I think it's Erik Erikson's stages of emotional development. The first thing you learn is whether you can trust that somebody's going to meet your needs. Your mother is going to meet your needs or not. And that's so foundational to us being okay, to feel like we can be okay in the world. Hello.
Speaking of,
Oh.
Hi.
Sorry to interrupt. We just wanted to see.
It's okay. Hi, how you doing?
Good.
So I'm sorry to interrupt, but I wanted to ask a question on what you were talking about, faith and faith in the different things.
Yeah.
Do you how do you feel like how do you get rid of all the noise? And I'm sorry I came to the conversation late, but how do you get rid of all the noise, with all the negative stuff that's coming out on a daily basis? And how do you ground yourself and try to have faith with all this negativity around us?
I think that's an important question, and I think each of us has to find the ways to do that. I encourage people in my congregation to choose a ritual or like prayer, meditation, yoga, something to build into their lives that inputs positive, positive energy, positive messages. I think that it's important to bring into ourselves things. For myself, I do at least 2 Buddhist readings a day, and I do a Bible reading once a day. I pray and meditate. Now, keep in mind, I'm a minister. I'm supposed to, I guess I'm supposed to do that. But I think that it's important that we have these kinds of things that feel right to us, that we do those regularly, and they just become part of who we are. The other thing is, I think that it's important, again, to have connections, those loving connections with not only our partner, but the people in our lives, and to make choices about, having right relationships, to be in right relationships, healthy, ethical, value-driven relationships. Not, if there are people in your life that are really causing you distress, you can make choices about whether to be in that relationship or how much to be in that relationship. How much can you tolerate of being in a negative relationship? I'm very clear about setting boundaries. I don't want to be in a relationship that's going to be destructive for me, or if I have to be, I'm going to limit that time, or I'm going to say no. I don't want to continue that relationship with that person. So in our congregation, we work on what's called right relationship, is where we try to work with each other and teach each other how to be in ethical, loving, caring, respectful relationship with each other. It's part of what we value. It's our first value in Unitarian Universalism. That people deserve respect inherent just because they exist.
Awesome.
That help some?
Awesome question. I have another question here from Lori. Hi, Lori. She's asking, do you have any favorite scriptures? And maybe you can share if they're from different.
One of my favorite is from Corinthians. It's the one I use at weddings all the time about love, and I'm probably going to butcher it, but when you think of love, it says faith, hope, and love, and the greatest of these is love. You've heard that how many times at weddings and such. And what that says to me is that it's the connections that we have with each other and the caring and love we have for ourselves that needs to be the first thing. Faith, that idea of trust, and hope are fine, and they're useful to some extent, but we have to live in this world as it is in love, and not treat each other with. That whole passage is about not treating each other with disrespect, treating each other with honor and dignity, with caring. And for me, that's one of the most important. I have another that's a quote that I put on my email, which is about uncovering. It's from the Old Testament, but it's been kind of revamped. But it's uncovering the light under the bushel. Because I think that each of us has wonderful, incredible things to offer, and often we hide it because we don't want to let other people know what's going on within us or who we really are. We don't trust that because we've been hurt so many times, or because the world doesn't accept who we are. And so those are the ones I rely on. Did you want to ask something, Lori?
Lord is joining us from the Golden Gate Bridge tonight. So you were saying this earlier that
here's Lori's back on now. So
sorry about that. I'm trying this from my phone instead of the laptop, so it's a little different. No, I love those 2 verses, and I think the first one, like you were saying, that you use that a lot. I think it's really key in our world right now, in a time when people are so willing to be unloving to one another and find so much to not love. So I really appreciate that you brought that one. And also, as I'm thinking about hiding the light under the bushel, as opposed to letting your light shine, that's also, I think, probably a daily challenge for all of us. And here we are with our lights in our homes, kind of separate from one another, but figuring out how we can bring our light together. So, you gave us a mini sermon there. So I appreciate that, Pastor Tom.
Thank you very much.
But just to reiterate, Reverend, your congregation is open to anyone from any religion, right? So if someone is in partnership with someone who's Jewish or Catholic, or you have these mixed, or, you know, or even if you're from another religion, you still are welcome to joining.
Oh yeah, I mean, I consider myself a Buddhist, humanist, panentheist, Unitarian Universalist. And I draw different resources from each of those. You know, feeling, for me, that idea of being connected with something larger than myself, believing the divinity in all things, helps me treat the world and other people with reverence, so that I don't do I don't do damage to things outside of me, either it be a tree or a person, you know, that I feel like that this is part of treating them as part of the divine. I'm part of the divine, they're part of the divine, and we need to treat each other as if we're all the divine. But that's one piece. And then for the Buddhist piece, I'm a strong advocate of meditation, of being connected with each other through service. And that's really part of the Buddhist tradition. So, I mean, you can find those things in each tradition that help you to live in the world in a more congruent way, that's congruent with who you are as a person.
Beautiful. Let's see. I thought I missed.
Oh, there was one question about how do we express our appreciation if we're wearing a mask?
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's an interesting thing. And my wife has really conquered this more than anybody else I know, because she notices the little things about people and comments about those little things she notices in other people. We'll go into the grocery store and we'll be in line at the checkout counter, and she'll notice the person's name, and she'll say the checkout person's name, and she'll say how much she appreciates them for what they're doing. Or, you know, we've been in church and I've seen her say to somebody, I mean, those are lovely earrings. Could you tell me where you got them? Tell me the story of those earrings. And again, those are things you can do without having to see someone's face. You know, I saw recently on the news today that there are doctors now that have pictures of themselves so that their patients can see who they are behind the mask. So I think there are many ways that we can, you know, I've been doing a lot of walking lately because I just need to exercise somehow. And I make it a point to talk to each person that I pass. You know, if they have a mask on, it doesn't matter. I say to them, how are you doing? How are things going? Hope you're doing well and all this. You know, again, trying to make that connection, that emotional connection with the person that's near me.
I love that. I love the attention to detail. Sometimes I feel like I want to say something to somebody. I don't know if anyone else feels this, but then I get scared, like I'm going to sound like a dork, or they're going to think I'm weird, or, you know, I get self-conscious, and then I don't make myself vulnerable and put myself out there, and I lose that opportunity for connection.
I understand. I mean, you know, as I said, my wife does it much better than me. But I think part of it is, you know, and I've seen this time and time again, when she does it, the person she does it with, it just brightens. I mean, you can see the change in their face, and their body relaxes, and they feel like, oh my gosh, I've been noticed.
Mm-hmm.
That's so important.
Yeah, I think everybody just wants to be seen. You know,
Mm-hmm.
Depression, a lot of times depression, I think, can come from feeling like you're not important or you're invisible. And especially now that we are so isolated.
So there's a question about studying Buddhism and what lineage. So I've studied a lot of different traditions, but the one that I have practiced has been Zen Buddhism. And the reason that there's a few reasons about that. The Zazen meditation that is practiced within Buddhism is just what I think what I understand, Buddha really taught and experienced first himself, which is just simply paying attention to your breathing, going in and going out, and counting from 1 to 10. It's just a simple breathing exercise, and the understanding that when you're doing this breathing, whether you're sitting or kneeling or whatever you're doing, that whatever insight you get is of value if you attend to it. You know, this idea of mindfulness, awareness of your environment, and mindfulness of your own breathing. You know, I learned how to do, this may sound strange, but I learned how to mindfully do the dishes. And so this has become a ritual for me, something that I know I have to do every day. And I pay attention to everything that I experience mentally, physically, emotionally, and spiritually as I do those. And I have some important lessons or insights or enlightenments I've experienced is how important it is for this task to be done, and that it's an expression not only of needing to keep the house clean, but of my love for the people in my household. And as I continue to do that practice, my love for those around me has grown. And that may sound a little odd, but it's what's happened as I've opened myself up to that experience, to all that I might experience during that time. Rather than just trying to rush through it, get it done because it needs to get done, I've tried to allow it to be a time of enrichment and spiritual enlightenment.
Reverend, would you be okay with maybe walking us through one of the breathing exercises that you teach your congregation? Or
oh, sure. So to get settled in my, so what we'll just do something very, very simple. Again, I said that the thing that Buddha taught, first of all, to the people that became his followers, was just this idea of breathing. So I ask you to do is just sit comfortably in a position that feels right for you. And just, you know, I encourage you to take a deep breath. And then let's just get into breathing a little bit. Breathe in comfortably and easily, paying attention to the air coming into your body, expanding your lungs. And then feel the muscles contracting around your lungs and the air coming out and out easily, comfortably. So you're just paying attention to your breathing to start. Now let's change it just a little. Let's breathe in through your nose and out through your mouth. After you get comfortable doing that, with each breath, just count it as one. Breathe in as one. Breathe out. Breathe in 2. Breathe out. And continue that until you reach 10 and start over again. Now, while you're doing that, don't worry if things are going on in your mind. It's called the monkey mind, and things will go on in and out. You're not trying to slow your mind. You're not trying to control your mind. You're just allowing yourself to continue to bring yourself back to focusing on your breathing and the counting. If you lose track or you get distracted, just come back to it and just keep coming back to it. And that's all you need to do, is just come back to your breathing and the counting.
I don't know about anyone else, but I definitely feel more relaxed. Thank you.
It's a pleasure.
And for Paul, who just joined us, he's probably thinking, what the heck are we doing?
No, I'm sorry I'm late, but I always like to dip in and see what's happening.
Thanks for joining us, Paul.
No, my pleasure. I'll try to be on time, you know?
No, no worries, no worries. I'm recording this, so
Oh, good.
you can rewatch it. But Reverend Tom was just guiding us through a breathing meditation.
Sure. No, that's all right.
In case that wasn't obvious. Well, I want to invite anybody else here to take the opportunity to ask Reverend Tom any more questions and start closing out here.
Well, I did want to ask where the recording is in case anybody wants to watch it for my congregation if they...
I will be posting it on 2 pages, on the official South Miami Neighbors page and the group page.
Okay, thank
and
you.
I can also email you a link or a copy of it, so you can email it as well if you'd like.
Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
This is Ray. I have a question. Is the South Miami page a closed group, or can anybody just get into it?
No, I believe anybody can get into it. Holly, is that correct?
I can answer for her. It is not a closed group, but it is but people do have to like answer a few questions, and there are some rules of etiquette that we all have to abide by.
Good.
So it's a moderated group. I think that's...
Yes, yeah, that's correct. That's a good, yes.
That's great. That's wonderful. I'm glad Leslie, I'm glad you're doing this. I think it's so important right now.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm glad people are willing to be a part of it, and I wasn't sure at first if anybody would, but.
So a couple of quick things I'll say, and then I'll take any questions. But if you're interested, you can in attending our virtual services, which are that's all we got right now. You can go to uumiami.org, and there's a link to our YouTube page. Actually, you can go to the YouTube page anytime and see some of the services and some of the. I also have some short services like Vesper services on there and some meditations. You're welcome to listen to any of them if you find them to be helpful. Hi, Paul.
Hello.
Did you have a question?
No, I'm great. I'm fine.
Okay.
So in those moments when we're feeling like we can't do this another day, or we want to kill our significant other, or kids are driving us crazy, I just, like what you just did with us, I think that's a really simple, great exercise for us to just walk away and take a little bit of space and time to process and just breathe and not, like you said, not take out our frustrations on anybody, because it's not really fair or nice to do. I'm certainly guilty of it. We're human at the end of the day. We're not perfect, and we're going to.
That's exactly right.
Okie doke. Well, I think if no one else has any more questions or comments.
I just have a technical question, if I can, spinning off what Reverend Tom said regarding Zoom bombing. I think we were very fortunate that we weren't. That can be a very distressing incident. And who's the host? Are you co-hosting, Tom?
Oh, no.
I am.
You are.
I've never experienced that. I've never come across that. But I've been seeing more and more posts about it. So if that's a real thing, and I think somebody actually this week posted on the South Miami group page how to avoid that. So I'm gonna go back and reread that and see how we can make this. Well, this does require a password, but the password is public. I've made it public on so we'll have to figure something out. Has anybody here experienced that?
Oh, yes, we have.
Oh, yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I guess the thing I would say is just be careful, and I find it to be useful to have a co-host who can manage if somebody gets on there and tries to do something negative, that they can take them off. That's really an important piece, because you don't want that kind of negativity to be on a very positive Zoom call that you have going here.
Exactly. This was really a very good group, and not unexpected, being a member of the congregation and knowing Tom. We're very fortunate in this regard. And it would be a shame, really. And not only, I have a friend who's IT at UM, and their Zoom bombing was getting so bad because they were doing all their classes virtually. And it was so bad that they had to issue protocols. So he sent me a whole list. Also, Zoom is issuing lists. There's what's called a waiting room, where a person can be in there while you're checking on things. But we were very fortunate. We had an excellent turnout, I would think, for a first-time venture here, Leslie. So thank you for this, and hopefully we can do it again.
Yeah, that would be great. You're welcome. Thank you for being here, everyone. It's really nice to see all of your faces. And Lori, did you have something you wanted to say?
I was gonna just say that, Pastor Tom, I recently went to your to a service at your church. I went to worship service probably maybe 6 weeks ago, maybe 2 months. I'm the worst tracker of time, but it was so serendipitous. I want you to know that I really felt like I could be however I wanted to be. My name tag was sideways, and I said, "People here will understand." And then, and serendipitously, there was a drum circle meditation.
My wife was leading it. Yeah.
Oh, that was your wife. She was lovely. Okay, that's really cool. What a treat that was, and totally unexpected. And I go to a lot of churches. I'm sort of a church hobo by nature. And never have I stumbled upon a drum circle meditation. I thought that was really cool. That was cool.
Thank you. I think it's cool too. She obviously does as well.
And she's cool too.
She's pretty cool. Yeah.
Yeah, she is. She's wonderful.
Yeah.
You've got to get her on one of these conversations hosting a drum circle next full moon.
That's right. That's right.
Enrique has a question.
Hello.
Hi.
I don't know if you can see me or not.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, awesome.
Enrique.
Hi.
¿Cómo está, Enrique?
I'm super grateful for this conversation.
Oh, nice.
Well, thank you very much.
Yeah, I feel really just a lot more relaxed and inspired after hearing what you all had to share. And you know, during this time since we've had this lockdown, the stay-at-home order, it's been like setting up a new routine and a little bit more stressful, and I'm just feeling constantly busy and like uneasy. And so after hearing some of the things that you shared that help you input positive when there's so much negative, I feel a little like it would be hard for me to add something new into my routine. And I don't want to feel discouraged in like 3 or 4 days. It's like, okay, yeah, what were those things I can do? Is there any advice that you would have as far as starting to implement some of these things into?
Well, the simplest thing to do is either the breathing that we just did today, and you can do that anywhere. You can stop with whatever you're doing and do that. The other thing that's helpful to me is a reminder, and so that's why I've signed up for a couple of Buddhist readings. I'd signed up for I don't want to sign up for too many, but one or two. If you get something like that in the mail and you take the time to really read it and sit with it for a little while, but I mean, whatever tradition speaks to you, that's a really great Hindu one. I'd have to look it up, but you know, find the one that speaks to you and just sign up for it and just take. It takes 5 minutes to read and just sit with for a moment. It makes a world of difference.
That's awesome. Where could I sign up for? Do you know?
So I signed up. So Tricycle is one of them. It's a Buddhist reading that I get every day. Hold on, I have to open up my. Tell you. I get them so often. I mean, I get them regularly now, so I don't even remember where they are, what they are. But I know Tricycle is a short one that's easy to listen to. Tricycle Community, and oh gosh,
Don't worry, Tom. If you want, email me, and then when I repost the recording, I can put it in there.
And I found a tricycle.org.
Yeah,
I'll look into that.
Yeah, you just sign up and you get a daily reading. It's maybe 3 lines long. It's really easy to read and just sit with. And then there was another one that I like, but I can't remember it. I can't find it on my email right now.
Well, looking forward to checking that one out too. Thank you.
Okay, sure.
All right. Well, if no one else has any comments or questions.
It's been a pleasure spending time with you all. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you.
Thank you, Leslie. Thank you, Tom. Tom, see you in church.
Thank you.
Virtually, yes.
Virtually. Well, I'll see you Saturday, actually, right?
Yeah.
Saturday, you're doing that Saturday again, right?
Yes, Saturday we're going to have the League of Women Voters. Yes.
Yeah, definitely. I'll be there. Is that a 1 o'clock?
Yeah, 1 o'clock.
1 o'clock.
Saturday at 1. Okay, so Saturday at noon, we are hosting a Buddhist monk, actually.
Oh, wow.
Who will be guiding us through, talking a little bit more about meditation and guiding us through some more meditations as well. So please feel free to join us. Maybe before.
Who is it, Leslie? Maybe it's the one, Tom, that you.
We did a whole series on Buddhism at the church this last fall, and we had Buddhist monks from all over Miami, different traditions.
Really? Okay, so his name is Teo Castellano.
That doesn't ring a bell. No.
Okay. Okay.
We have, Miami is rich with Buddhism. They have Vietnamese, Thai, Zen. I mean, it's just amazing.
Tom, the most impressive was, what was it? Chatso, the last name? The Buddhist, the Zen Buddhist that you had in that 4-week series.
Yeah, I have to look it up. Oh, the Zen Buddhist was the one that meets at our church, but I'm going to let you all go because I'm going to keep talking about this.
Yeah, she was wonderful, absolutely wonderful.
Well,
okay, guys.
I'm going to go enjoy my glass of wine. Everybody,
cheers.
Exactly.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.
See you Saturday, hopefully.
Bye,
Thanks
everybody.
again, Pastor Tom.
Bye-bye. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.